Hello everyone, welcome to lesson 33 of our GoLang course. In this lesson, we are finally going to cover functions. So what exactly are functions? Functions are like specialized tools in programming. They are created to perform a particular job and you can use them whenever you need that job done. This modularity allows for code reuse and making development more efficient. Functions can accept data, process it, and then optionally return a result. This input and output mechanism makes functions dynamic and flexible. Functions are fundamental building block of well-organized code. They allow you to break down complex tasks into smaller, more manageable pieces. This makes your code easier to read, understand, and maintain. As we have done in previous examples, you can't really keep on writing everything in the main function. You have to divide it in smaller code blocks using functions. When you run a program, what's happening under the hood is a series of function calls. Each function does its job and the program progresses based on how these functions are called and interact. This orchestration of functions is what drives the program behavior. Let's understand this with a small illustration. Here, as you can see, we have a function block and you can supply inputs to that function. The code inside the function will process that input and give you an output. This is basically how a function will work. The input and output paths are optional. That means a function may or may not accept the input. Similarly, a function may or may not provide an output. When we start building our application, you will see we have multiple functions that call each other, and in the end, what we get is orchestrations of these functions, which is called a program. The input starts from the main, then goes into some function, which is passed on to some other function, moving on to some other function, and then finally the output. We covered earlier that in Go program, the main function serves as an entry point. It's where the program execution begins. As the name suggests, the main function is the function itself. The function does not take any input parameter or arguments, and it does not return any values. We also call functions that don't return any values void functions. For example, in Go, the FMT package provides functions for formatting and printing outputs. We have used them in our previous lessons. The println function that we have used to print to the console takes the input arguments that we provided and prints that to the console. So when we do fmt.println, that's essentially a function call, and we provide argument to the function within the brackets. Unlike some other programming languages, Go allows functions to return more than one value. This feature is particularly useful for functions that perform tasks which may produce multiple results. It's a powerful tool for efficient and concise code. It also forms the backbone of error handling in Go, which we will cover in future lessons. For now, just remember that it is a convention that if the function returns an error, it should be the last return value. Here, we have a basic function syntax. So you define a function using the func keyword, followed by the function name, then braces or parentheses, and inside those parentheses, the parameters that the function accepts, followed by the return type, and then curly braces, inside which the code block or the processing block of the function lives. Now let's look at some examples. Here I have a func main, so I'm just going to create some more functions below it. Here, I created a function, say hi. So I use the func keyword. The func name is say hi. It doesn't accept any arguments or return anything. It just prints hi to the console. To call a function, you have to specify the function name followed by the curly braces. Now, if we run our program, you will see hi printed to the console. As expected, we have hi printed to the console. I'm going to define another variation of this function that accepts an input parameter. In function say hi to someone, we are accepting name, which is of type string, as an input parameter, and we use that input parameter to print hi space name. The parameter you pass to the function are scoped to this function block and are used inside that function block itself. So if I replace say hi with say hi to someone and pass name, code and learn and run our program, you will see hi code and learn printed to the console. So basically we are providing the value code and learn as the name, and it takes the name and prints it to the console. This is where the modularity comes into play for a function. So you can pass anything like Alice and it will print the same thing for Alice as well, or Bob, and it will print hi Bob. Next, let us look at another function that takes the first and the last name as input parameter and returns the full name. So as you can see here, the full name function takes two parameters. First name and last name both are of type string. Here you can see I just used string a single time. This is something you can do in Go. So instead of doing this, if the arguments of the same type, I can just do first name, comma last name and then string. And this function returns the string, which is the full name. So we are going to replace this call with full name. And I can say code is the first name and learn is the last name. Now if we run a program, nothing prints to the console because the full name is actually returned from this function. And how do you save the return value? You can just do a variable assignment. So I can say fn is equal to full name, or the return value from the full name function. Fn now stores the full name. I can do say hi to someone and pass the full name. Let's clear our console and run the program to see what we get. As you can see, hi code learn is printed. That's because first what we did was call the full name function with first name as code and last name as learn, store the full name, and then call another function, say hi to someone, which accepts the name of the person and passes the full name. Next, let us look at how you can return multiple values from a function in Go. So in this function, if you notice full name with length, we are taking the first and the last name and then returning a string value along with the int value. The string value is the actual full name, while the int value is the length of the full name. When you are returning multiple values from a Go function, you need to use parentheses around the return types. Here, when we were only returning a single value, we didn't need to use the parentheses around the return type. But for multiple returns, you have to do it. So now, if I replace this call with full name with length, you should see Go is complaining because the function returns two values, but we are only initializing one value. So for the other one, I can do L and then fmt println L. Run our program and you can see 10 is printed along with the full name or hi to code and learn. In Go, you always have to use a variable. In case you don't want to use the second return value, you can do underscore, which tells Go that we don't want to use the length value. So if I do now, you can see it works fine. It will also work if I want to not use the first value, which is the full name. Clear our console, go run main.go, and you can see only length is printed. So with the underscore, you can say we don't want to use this value, and Go will allow you to work with the function. That's it for this lesson. Let's summarize what we have learned in this lesson. Functions allow you to break down your code into smaller, manageable pieces. Each function is designed to perform a specific task. This modular approach makes your code easier to read and understand and maintain. It also promotes code reusability. In Go, you define a function using a func keyword followed by the function name, then the input parameters and the return values. Functions in Go can also be designed to accept 0 or more parameters, as we saw in the examples. Parameters are the inputs that the function uses to perform its task. Additionally, a function may return a value or multiple values, again as we saw in our examples. The return type is specified in the function signature. A function signature is what we defined when we declare the function. It consists of the input arguments along with the type and the return values. However, both the parameters and the return values are optional depending on the specific functionality that the function is intended to provide. That's it for the lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment under the video or reach out to our Discord server. I will be happy to revert back. Thanks for watching. See you in the next lesson. Happy coding.